I tell patients, OCD is like being at the top floor of a burning building that's not actually on fire, but the alarms are going off and the terror in your body is completely extreme. And the way to get over OCD is to say to your brain, even though the authenticity of the fire is completely undeniable, is to say, screw it, I'm dying today.
As somebody who has faced debilitating anxiety and depression for the majority of my adult life, specifically the past 30 plus years, I can tell you without a shadow of doubt that Dr. Stephen Phillipson is the godfather of anxiety doctors. I have read, researched, devoured every doctor, every book, every novel, every medication, studied and researched the mind in all its complexities, in all its forms. And Dr. Stephen Phillipson was the one, the only one, who offered sunshine when I was going through this dark, black, abysmal hopelessness called anxiety. And if you're watching this right now, I would implore you and encourage you to devour every second of this. And we also have a part 2 coming out as well, because at the very, very least, it will offer you clarity on a perplexing, mystifying, life-altering ailment called anxiety. I hope you get a lot out of this.
The choice, I don't even think you could call it an article. It's more like a novella. By the way, this is something, and I'm going to leave a link. Everybody knows this. I'm going to leave a link to Dr. Stephen Phillipson's, I call it his magnum opus. It's because initially when I first discovered him 35 years ago, his articles, Thinking the Unthinkable and Others, he actually coined the term pure O, which is why I call him the godfather of anxiety. And he hates this, of course, naturally. I don't want to embarrass him, but you are really that impactful. It's interesting because you use the term in the Choice article, autonomy, and you talk about independence. You talk about framing. You talk about using your own perspective. So I want to get into that really quickly, though, before we do, Dr. Stephen Phillipson. Steve. So, Steve, let me ask you this: Why you could have probably endeavored upon any specialty or any practice? Why anxiety? Why specifically? And I know you do multiple types, but OCD seems to be one of your major specialties. How did this come about? Speaking of choice, why did you choose this to be your vocation in life?
As many things in life, it sort of visited me during my second internship at the Institute for Behavior Therapy in Manhattan, which was at the time, sort of the premier offering for behavior therapy, which in Manhattan was still a minority because Manhattan is kind of a cesspool of Freudian thought at that time. A lot of psychoanalysis was still popular. Woody Allen certainly saw to that. And you know where that got him with his daughter.
We won't go there.
Not going to mention that.
Yeah.
So, so at that internship, one of the senior psychologists was named Gordon Ball, and he was really New York City's premier specialist with OCD. And, we had a tight group of staff, and I really liked the way he thought. He kind of approached treating OCD from a very scientific, very data-based methodology, which, was just really coming out in the literature in terms of how behavior therapy can have a very, very powerful and positive effect on OCD and anxiety disorders. And so I really liked the way he thought about the condition. And he started referring some of his lower fee patients to me. And he supervised me for over a year. And so we started the first group combining our caseload of behavior therapy group for OCD. It was really the first in the country in around 1987. And the condition just really fascinated me, that very intelligent, very rational people can be manipulated so, kind of incredibly powerfully by a malfunctioning brain. And so my brain doesn't like mysteries, and it sort of worked on the condition like a Rubik's Cube to really kind of decode what's going on here. Why would a human brain create such havoc within its own host world. And I'm happy to say that combining my knowledge of neurophysiology, the study of the brain, and in its physical form and the way that it works mechanically, and an understanding of behavioral principles, that it really facilitated putting together an understanding of what OCD's basis is, and what drives the nature of the condition.
So you were intrigued. You were something sparked in you. Your maybe innate desire to solve mysteries. That was something. And this is, I mean, I have to tell you, this is not like having gone through this and still going through this. It's not something that ever really. It's always a challenge. Let's put it that way. It's not even close to what it was when it first started with me in my younger days, but it's still one of those things that kind of pops up and, still has an impact on me, or still has an effect on me. It's not one of those things, is it? Where it's like you go to the doctor, you got a knee problem, and, the doctor takes an x-ray and says, oh, you got a little arthritis or a little inflammation. Here's some medicine. I'll see you in 2 weeks. We'll follow up and everything's okay. It's not like that. This is something that is so complex. We know so little about the brain in general, right? How did you discover these methodologies? And this really, we're going to dive deeper into choice. But how did you discover? And did you have the idea, like, man, I'm getting into something that's really heavy and may not be something that is wholly receptive to a lot of people? Because you said at the outset of this interview, I don't help people, right? And so it's up to the actual patient. You say this many times in your articles, and you say this a lot in Choice. It's up to you. So I can guide, I'm a passenger, but you're the driver, you're the captain, to use your phrase in your article. You need to be the captain of the boat, right?
Yeah.
Did it dawn on you that, like, my goodness, what did I get myself into? Or were you confident, based on your work and research and diligence, that this was something that you could, quote unquote, tackle?
Yeah. So when I first started out in the treatment of OCD, there was a woman in Philadelphia named Edna Foa, who is sort of the queen of ERP for OCD. And she was doing really successful work with people who had what are called observable ritualizers. So
can you explain ERP real quick, just so people understand what that is?
Sure. I'll try to give a Cliff Note version of a very complex.
Like a small brief.
Yeah. So ERP stands for exposure with response or ritual prevention. So the easy analogy that Edna Foa had really mastered was, so people who touch a public doorknob, their brain might say, maybe that doorknob has AIDS on it, because maybe someone with AIDS with some cuts on their hand left some trace elements of AIDS. And if I touch that doorknob, that the molecules of AIDS may somehow get into my skin, infect me, and then I might be a victim of AIDS.
Totally irrational, totally irrational, right?
Right, totally irrational. And what's funny is my patients would call the CDC, Center for Disease Control, and they would ask, is it possible to catch AIDS from a doorknob?
Wow.
And the CDC, I love their answer. They would say, there are no known cases yet of people who have caught AIDS from a doorknob. Exactly. It's like that line from Dumb and Dumber. You mean I got a chance?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not in a million, one in a million, right? Don't tell any anxiety sufferer that. Yeah,
the people would hear the CDC say there are no known cases yet, and it would help none of my patients, because they'd be like, their brains would say, well, you may be the exception, but actually, the driving force of what would compel a very intelligent, rational person to either wash their hands, or, like Michael Jackson would do, is use a glove to open doorknobs.
Oh, wow. Now we're dating ourselves.
I have got no problem dating myself. So I'm a boomer. I'm definitely a boomer, as you know, from my technological naivete. Yeah. So, people, very intelligent, rational people, are being manipulated by their emotional system.
Right.
And so it's interesting, because people with hand washing would say, I wash my hands until they feel clean. And I don't know about you, Nez, but I wash my hands until they don't have dirt on them anymore.
Right.
And I can see the cleanliness. I don't use feelings to say, oh, I've washed my hands sufficiently.
Right.
But I'm still explaining ERP, and my ADD just got in the way.
No, please.
So exposure response prevention. So in this treatment, we would have patients maybe take a paper towel and touch what might be considered a predominantly safe doorknob, rub the paper towel briskly on the doorknob, and then kind of pat it all over themselves, pat it on all objects that they are in contact with. And then maybe even, touch the paper towel and, let's say, eat a Cheerio or a pretzel. So they're now exposing themselves to the very thing that their broken brain is saying, or actually making a person feel, has a danger to it.
Right.
So what we do is we would have a person, touch the doorknob, paper towel, and then eat things, about, let's say, 10 times a day. Repeatedly show the brain and demonstrate that the brain signal of danger and distress is not going to be influential in any way in creating a avoidance or escape response. Now, a lot of people who are ignorant about the treatment and OCD would say, oh, look, you're learning that the AIDS is not contagious on a doorknob. And that's what you're teaching your brain by ERP. And that's completely false, because the brain that is malfunctioning has no thinking capabilities whatsoever. It's a pure emotional distress signal. So we can't say to that part of the brain, hey, stupid brain, you can't catch AIDS from a doorknob. But by demonstrating over and over again that emotional signal is, and this is the magic word in terms of recovery, irrelevant. That the signal is irrelevant emotionally, and that the cognitive warning is also equally irrelevant. And so by taking the distress signal in the way that it manifests itself, whether it be AIDS on a doorknob or checking the knobs on the stove, and what I specialize in, Pure O, are people who have repetitive intrusive thoughts that create, yes, a highly distressed signal.
That's me. Yeah,
you've mentioned that. And so let's say a common Pure O theme would be, let's say a person sees a knife and they might have the thought of taking it and stabbing themselves, or taking the knife and gouging out their eyes, or taking the knife or injuring a nearby loved one. So this thought would occur to a person and then once again become bonded with this emotional distress signal. And the reason that we know it's the distress signal that's the problem is because I have every Pure O thought in the book, but I don't have a broken amygdala, which is the central part of the brain that's malfunctioning and sending false signals. So when I have a thought of like stabbing someone else with a knife, I'm just like, yeah, brain, thanks for sharing. And the event lasts literally 2 seconds, and I've gone on with my life.
Or at a traffic light, you see somebody cross the street, and the thought gets into your head. You put this in choice that, oh man, what if I run over this person? Whereas somebody like me or somebody watching and listening to this could agonize over this for months, for years, for days. It's like, it's the visceral, and this is what I love. I want to get to the autonomous systems next. It's that visceral emotional electricity, Doc, that surges through your chest, that surges through. It's literally, like you said, the amygdala, and a lot of people might not know what the hell we're talking about. The amygdala is that fight or flight part of the brain. Some people call it the reptilian brain or the primitive brain that sends that signal. Are you going to fight this or flight this? And that it's that agonizing why. It's the obsession of what does this mean about me? The identity with that thought. But it's not that alone, Doc. It's the emotional. It's the physicality, the palpitations, the constriction, the sweaty palms. By the way, Doc, have you ever had severe anything that you've ever, I don't want to say, how do I say, I can't say helped. So what do I say that you do when you don't help? Guide? Can I say guide?
Offer ideas?
Well, no, I can't. I mean, for this interview purposes, I don't want to misrepresent you by saying you help people, right? You said, Nez, I don't help people. So what verb can I use? Guide?
Sure. Yeah.
But no, so here's my question. Have you ever had anything that you've helped or see, I said helped, guided people with? Have you ever suffered from anything like that?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like any of the ailments that you guide people with?
Right. So that reminds me of a sort of a funny joke, because one of my favorite things patients will say to me is they'll call me a liar. They'll say, Steve, I know you're a liar.
Oh, yeah. I heard this. And
I'll say, that's kind of funny you say that, because one of the things I really pride my style on is I'm a painfully, transparent guy. I've had patients say, how much can I pay to lie to me, Steve? Because, you really don't, pull back. You don't pull punches. And I'm like,
and by the way, folks, anybody listening and watching this, I've talked to Steve offline. He definitely doesn't hold back,
no.
Which I love, by the way, which it was so refreshing. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you.
He also hates it when I interrupt him.
You've been really well behaved so far, Nez.
Okay.
I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. And I hope your wife benefits from that feedback also.
Yeah. So they want you to lie to them. They want you to lie.
No. Well, I'll say, why are you saying I'm a liar? And they'll say to me, no one can understand OCD and decode it the way that you do and not have it yourself. And that's why they say I'm lying. They say there's no way anyone can relate to and understand.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Because my brain doesn't like mysteries, and it plays with mysteries kind of like a Rubik's Cube, and it just keeps twisting until things kind of fit into place. And I really, gave a lot of time trying to figure out the mechanisms of OCD, why the brain would generate these, upsetting thoughts, but pair it with this, broken signal.
I think it's meant to be, man. I think it's destiny. I think there's something that, like I said, I consider myself, maybe contrary to what the doc believes, but I consider myself a very intelligent person. And I'm telling you, nobody has dug deeper into this, because I've always been one of these people who's ferociously independent, maybe to my own detriment. And I've done all of my own, qualitative and quantitative research. And I'm not mincing words. I'm going to embarrass Steve here again, but I have literally combed the desert when it came to this ailment, and nobody, and I mean capital N, nobody has been able to convey. It's like reading a really great book or a really great poem that moves you. It's like the person is inside your head. They're speaking for you. They understand you to the point and to the degree that you literally feel like, did they somehow possess my body for a day? How are they inside my head? And Doc, you have that.
Thank you. No, I'm not embarrassed. And I'd say many of my patients say sort of the exact same thing.
Okay. It's fantastic. I want to get into this, because this is really important. And I want to dive deeper into this, if I may, Doc, Steve. So
Doc is fine too. I like that too.
I like Doc a lot. Steve, we're not at Steve yet.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, Doc. So the choice, a lot of your articles that I came across that were monumentally helpful for me, they didn't delve as deep as this. When you were writing this, and I just talk about this briefly, because the length of this, I was blown away when I first came. And by the way, I first came across this. I'm going to confess something right now. And this is, I don't want to turn this into a therapy session, because that's not fair to Doc. But about a year and a half ago, I had kind of a relapse, and I want to talk about relapses with you. And it could have had something to do with what I was going through in my life or what have you. And I remembered Doc, and I was like, oh, I remember this was, I had a dormancy, Doc, of probably 10, 15 years where I had a stranglehold on this demonic cycle, which I call him the eternal doubter, that guy that lives inside your brain, who tries to thwart you in every way possible.
We see, the thing is, I used to see it in more of that demonic way, but I've really come to see it as it's like a crazy best friend. Your brain is not trying to screw with your life. It's not trying to pollute your existence. That wouldn't make any sense. Your brain is trying to help you, but it's based on a malfunctioning definition of you needing help. I tell patients OCD is like being at the top floor of a burning building that's not actually on fire, but the alarms are going off and the terror in your body is completely extreme. And the way to get over OCD is to say to your brain, even though the authenticity of the fire is completely undeniable, is to say, screw it, I'm dying today. I'm willing to die. I'm not going to figure out how to get out of the building. I'm not going to avoid going in the building. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to remain engaged in this process, even though I think I smell smoke. And the brain is just trying to save you. And that's the entire basis of this amygdala. It's designed, if we go into a cave for the first time as cavemen, and we hear a crickle crackle, is that a bear that's about to kill us? Or is that a deer and we're going to eat today? And so the signal goes off physiologically to say, how am I going to deal with this, intense crisis? Deal with a bear and run the hell out of there, or pick up a stick and go get our food? And so that's the signal that is malfunctioning.
This is why you're here, Doc. I love this. You see, what you're doing is what you talk about and espouse in your many helpful, dare I say, articles and tutelage, which is reframing.
Right. And what's interesting, what you're saying about it being demonic or, and antagonizing is exactly my latest article that I'm just about complete with on exactly that reframing. Because rather than having your brain create a thought of stabbing your own child, let's say, and thinking, oh my God, what a horrible thought. What does that say about me? To understand that the thought is just natural human brain activity that we.
You said a lot of people have these thoughts. And by the way, Doc, I remember.
That was an interruption.
I know it was, but it was very poignant. I'll tell you why it's poignant, Doc. I'll tell you why it's poignant. See, we should start our own little shtick because we're great together. No, but Doc, this is poignant. I remember vividly having the most strange, bizarre. I mean, people talk about dreams, right? Dreams are absolutely insane, but daydreams are just as insane sometimes. When you just kind of drift and then you come back and you go, what the world was that? But most normal amygdalas or normal functioning circuitous what have yous. I'll let you divulge the technical stuff. But most people who don't have what we are talking about today can just let it go.
That's right.
I remember, like, I've had weird, strange, what if I jumped off a cliff, or what if I'm standing on a ledge, and what if I just did it right now? Like, what does that mean about? I never examined it. Why did this amygdala break down? Is there any thought to that, Doc? Why is it that we have amygdalas, primitive brains, that seem to dominate? Because one of the preeminent themes is logic. I am an intelligent person. You cannot out-logic this, I'm not going to call it a demon, but this maybe malfunctioning aspect of our brains. Why is it that the primitive guy can beat the logic guy? Like, why can't I just go, like, Doc, why can't, and I know millions of people listening to this are thinking the same thing. Why can't I just go, this is irrelevant, and just that be it?
Because humans are so influenced by emotions.
That's it. That's it.
And intelligent people, they're used to feeling better by reasoning out problems. And so people with OCD spend thousands and thousands of hours trying to reason out of this crisis. How can I get my brain to stop telling me to stab my own child?
So true.
And the problem is, the more effort you put in to stopping your brain from thinking about stabbing your own child, the more you're actually reinforcing the concept to your brain that this thought is meaningful and relevant.
I love it.
And so when you're,
I can see light bulbs, Doc, go off across the globe right now. I'm serious.
I hope so.
I'm serious.
So. One thing that's really important, you were just even calling your brain thoughts bizarre. And my brain immediately said, that's a problem.
Okay, why? Why is that a problem? Why?
Because you're disparaging your brain activity.
Don't attribute any negative connotation, is what you're saying.
Exactly. The whole principle
Even
of
if
mindfulness.
it's stabbing a loved one, even if it's stabbing a loved one.
Yeah, you're an absolute fan of mindfulness. So if my brain generates a I call it creative association, right? So when I'm on a cruise ship, and I love cruising, and I love being out on the balcony. You know, I'm a sailor. I love water. I love looking at water. My brain.
I've seen his boat, folks. It's amazing.
My brain always tells me. You'll be on it in July. My brain always tells me.
Damn right.
To jump. My brain always tells me to jump.
Wait. Time out. Say that again. Why does it do that? Why?
Because have you ever heard of stories of people falling off of ships or jumping off of ships?
All the time.
Right. So the opportunity is there for me to jump. And the brain sends the thought to jump because it's testing, is this okay? Are you safe? That's what my brain wants me to do. My brain wants me to prove that the thought, the association of jumping doesn't mean I have a problem or that there's a crisis that I need to work out. And so my brain on the balcony tells me to jump. Once again, I'm just like, thanks for sharing.
This is so good. You have no idea, Doc. I don't think you have any clue, Doc, how good this is. This is
you know what's funny, Nez, is that the only people who appreciate what I'm saying are people who have OCD.
What do you mean? People who don't have it, screw them.
I mean, exactly. They're not in the club.
Yeah, they're not in the club.
Because if you don't have OCD,
what did Groucho Marx say? I don't want to be a member of any club that'll have me.
Exactly. If you don't have OCD, none of this makes sense.
No, that's why you can't. I was telling you on the phone, Doc, you can't talk about this with anybody. The things that I'm talking to you about right now, Doc, I can barely talk to with my wife, and this is somebody I trust more than anybody on the planet.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's crazy.
I want to transition into what I think is probably the most important topic that we can discuss today.
Please,
a lot more for our future. The most important topic we can discuss today is what I refer to as brain voice versus gatekeeper voice.
I was just going to go. You beat me to the punch. I was just going to go there.
Mind meld, baby. Mind meld.
Yes, I love it. Please go. Okay. Continue.
So most people don't know this, and this is an absolute tragedy amongst the human condition. Most people don't know that between our ears there are at least two different voices. It's not just one happy system between our ears, and people, think of themselves as like this entirety of thought and entirety of belief. But it's absolutely incorrect. If I stub my toe, my brain voice, the machine that I have no control over and no ability to stop, my brain voice will say to me, "You clumsy idiot," out of nowhere.
Right.
Now keep in mind, I don't think I'm clumsy and I don't think I'm an idiot. And yet my brain, when I stub my toe, goes, "You clumsy idiot." Now that is an independent system, meaning there are many, many parts of the machine that we exist in. And you have to give credit, whatever designed this machine, and the machines of many creatures on this planet, it's an amazing machine.
It really is.
And so, who chooses to digest their food? Who chooses? This is the one that I'm really impressed with.
What about breathing? Breathing?
But our machine is able to maintain a body temperature of 98.7. That's incredible that we have a temperature regulation system that none of us can control. I can't snap my fingers and say, 99, baby. Let's be 99 now.
Can you see the screen right now, Doc?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, continue, please.
So we don't think of this, but thoughts are as much of an independent system as our body temperature or digestion of food.
Right.
And not all of our thoughts, by the way, because sometimes patients will say to me, what do you want to talk about? I'm always like, you're paying me this much money and you want me to bring up the topic? Thanks a lot for that one. I'm like, what do I want to talk about? Sailing,
Right. Right.
Steve, the gatekeeper, chooses sailing. But the brain can generate its own topics. And that's the whole nature of OCD, is that the machine generates associations that it's testing to see, is this okay? And that's why so many of the associations.
Why would it test me, Doc, with something so harrowing to see if it's okay? Or that's just its nature?
Yeah, because if you have a,
why not test me with something like beautiful, fluffy, unicorns or something?
That's just it, because we generally don't think of beautiful, fluffy unicorns as a problem.
Okay.
So the brain is always on the
So
lookout.
it's not testing. It's not trying to be. So have you heard the phrase, Doc? The brain is a terrible master, but an excellent servant. Have you heard that phrase before? You've never heard that phrase before?
No.
Okay, this is something that's been used in many. This is why I love having you here, Doc. Let me clear this for a second. This is why I love having you, Doc. The brain makes an excellent servant, but a terrible master. This is a line that has been thrown around, and I think this is where I can't wait for. I didn't even know until. By the way, guys, everybody listening and watching, leave a comment too. I'm sure Doc will come back, or I can maybe share him. If you have any pertinent questions, leave a question in the comments. But this idea has been floating around, and I think this is where the antagonistic relationship comes in, Doc, that you were saying that, like, well, no, Nez, let me stop you. What you're calling the devil or demonic or whatever, you're these pejoratives that you're describing to your own natural functioning autonomous system, you're already creating a sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, Doc, but I'm creating an adversarial relationship.
Right. And by the way, it's not an autonomous system, it's an independent system. The autonomy is the choice world that we possess.
What's the difference? Oh, okay, I see. Okay.
So I can choose to talk about sailing, and my brain might say, push Nez off the boat.
Right.
And if my brain shared that thought, I'd be like, yeah, thanks for sharing. And if I said to you, hey, Nez, my brain just shared the idea of pushing you off the boat, would you think, F Steve?
No, I wouldn't.
And if you said to me, hey, Steve, I'm cutting the cheese on your boat, and my brain just told me to poke your eye out with this knife, I'd be like, hey, thanks for sharing, because it's so important to understand. And this is what really kills people.
Yes.
Is they make an attribution that the brain voice is a representation of their character and identity in some way.
I love this. God, I love this.
And this is so paramount to understand, that if I have the thought of stabbing you while I'm cutting the cheese, all it says is that the machine tested an idea. And it says nothing about my inclination toward violence or my appreciation of you as a friend. It's just because this link occurred in the machine. Right. And the machine has nothing to do with what a representation of our identity or our interests or our deep down. Like, you see, the reason that Freud and Freudian thought is so detrimental to the treatment of OCD is because a Freudian would say, oh, this is a representation of an unconscious anger that you have. And we need to look into this.
Which reinforces its significance, right?
Completely reinforces it. And it actually exacerbates the condition. And going back to what I said in the beginning about the qualifications of your therapist, like the latest type of treatment, is called cognitive behavioral psychotherapy. And that's extremely dangerous to the treatment of OCD. Because the therapy that I do is called behavior therapy, in which we demonstrate to the brain, as I said before with ERP, repeatedly demonstrating the irrelevance of the thought. So, with your OCD, if your OCD, had a theme of violence to others, then in therapy, I would have you carry around like maybe a lock blade in your pocket, and I'd have you pat your pocket about 10 times a day throughout the day, look at your kids, look at your wife, and purposely generate the thought, oh, baby, I'd love nothing more than to kill you guys right now. By mimicking your brain voice and demonstrating and repeating its independent thought, but now you're doing it voluntarily.
Wow.
You're showing the machine that the signal and the thought are totally meaningless. And my patient will say to me, Steve, why should I do it on purpose? It says it to me 100 times a day anyway. And it's like, yes, because your brain is testing you, because you've rejected the test. You've rejected the idea. You've indicated to your brain there's a problem. And if you tell your brain there's a problem, our brain is designed to fix that problem.
Right.
And so that's why it becomes so, kind of focused on the issue. But when you show your brain voluntarily, you can say it, I can say it on purpose. Either way, it's inconsequential. I'm not going to hide the knives. I'm not going to gain reassurance that, a mom might have a thought of suffocating her baby while changing a diaper. And she becomes terrified. Oh my God, what does it say about me? I'm a horrible mother. Oh my God, I can't.
Maybe I shouldn't have my kid around me. Yeah.
I can't be trusted. I'm gonna. Hey, honey, can you come in while I change diapers? Because I really would feel safer if you were a chaperone, right? And so to now turn that around and have the mother alone, changing the diaper, and then saying, "Hey, that looks like a great pillow to suffocate my son with today."
Doc, I don't think you realize this, Doc, that it's. And maybe this is somebody who's actually gone through it can speak to this, which is why I'm hoping our listeners and viewers will get a lot out of this. Not only is it the actual ailment, not only is it the actual moment, not only is it the actual reinforcing and exacerbating and adding significance where there is none. There's this anticipatory anxiety too.
Yeah.
Hey, honey, we're gonna go to John and Connie's birthday party. You have no idea, like how much rigmarole somebody who has this. Well, what if there's knives there? What if there's kids there? What if I do this? What that kind of.
Well, the brain is just trying to once again warn you.
And what your response would be, Doc, I would presume. And my point in saying that is just that the suffering of the treatment is almost even more voluminous than the actual ailment, is it not? Meaning, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know what you mean by voluminous.
What I mean is the antidote, right, of actually augmenting the spikes, augmenting the thoughts and going after them, so to speak, rather than recoiling from them, is sometimes more it's more stressful, right? But it's only stressful for a period. Yeah.
Patients will often actually sort of complain that when they'll do the exposure therapy, and they'll say, Steve, when I choose it voluntarily, I don't get anxious. And that's because if the machine sees that you're choosing to activate the signal that it's warning you about, why would the brain send the warning emotional signal? Because you're doing it on purpose.
He's like, Pete's on top of it, right? Nez is on top of it.
I just wanted to get back to this cognitive therapy that many modern psychologists think that cognitive behavioral therapy is the effective treatment for OCD, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Okay, please.
So let's go back to the mom who is suffocating her child in her brain.
Yes.
And the brain system.
Yes.
Now, the patient will say to the cognitive behavioral psychologist, I have these intrusive thoughts. I feel completely distressed. My heart's pounding. My mouth gets dry. And I become terrified, and I'm afraid that my child's in danger. And the cognitive behaviorist would say, well, what's the evidence that there's any danger to your child? What reason could you possibly have? Or they might say, well, don't you know that these types of thoughts are just common to the human brain? And so by trying to provide reassurance, verbal reassurance, or trying to convey what's the evidence, like trying to prove that your child is safe. There's nothing in your history that would ever suggest that you would ever harm your child. And then the woman's brain goes, well, when I was a kid, I used to like killing ants. And so I have this history of violence. How do I know that it's not going to now extend itself to my child? And when I was a teenager, I was kind of one of the bullies. Doesn't that mean I'm a bad person? And so, but no, you see, that's not like harming a child. And you can never out logic, as you said.
Yeah.
And so using cognitive behavioral psychology, which is a therapy based on logic,
right?
You're wasting a lot of people's time and money because you're trying to instill a new way of looking at the brain. Whereas in behavioral psychology, the wording doesn't matter. You're demonstrating a replica of what the brain says is a problem. And by doing it repeatedly, to demonstrate the irrelevance of the signal, the emotional signal being irrelevant and the cognitive signal being irrelevant. And one of the ways that we know that the cognitive signal is irrelevant is sort of one of my favorite cases. I worked with a person who had 4 different and individual spike themes. One spike theme was he was afraid he was going to yell out a negative verbal racial slur to one of his coworkers.
Oh.
He couldn't convince himself that he might not act impulsively. One of his themes was when he was on the balcony of his building, he might jump. So he and I shared that one. One of his themes that it might harm his child. And one of his themes was when he was 18 and driving on a windy, dark road in New Hampshire, he might have hit someone and drove away and gotten away with vehicular manslaughter.
Wow.
And so he had these 4 themes. Now, the funny thing was, Nez, that when the balcony theme was at the forefront, he didn't give a damn about the hit and run. He didn't care. He knew he would never say something negative at work. He knew that his children were safe. And that he would wish for the other themes, because the idea of jumping off the balcony, that would really be bad. But then his brain would shift a month later. And he was only focused on, will I say something racially negative and ruin my career? I don't care about the hit and run. I don't care about the balcony. I don't care about harming my kids. But I might be in danger of screaming out a racial slur at work. And that's how we know that the themes are completely irrelevant, because when the brain unplugs the energy from the theme, the person doesn't give a damn. It's like me on the balcony of the boat. I don't care that my brain tells me to jump off the boat and into the water. It's a 1-second thought. Who cares? But when you have OCD and the energy locks in on the topic, there's where the feelings control a sense of there being a problem, and humans are designed to escape problems.
Would you say that attention is your ultimate power as a human being? What you give attention to, you give power to?
It's only attention in terms of the rejection of an idea. So you sort of want to give attention to, let's say, the spike, but to be able to just say, okay, thanks for sharing, and really convey to the brain that you're not going to have a relationship with it in a way that suggests there's a problem here, just because the brain is sharing these creative associations.
So no matter how visceral the emotional response, no matter how harrowing the image or thought, giving yourself permission to have those thoughts without reacting to them, and doing that repeatedly, consistently. This is something that's helped me. Would you say that's a sort of sound kind of approach, or am I not getting that right?
That's you just articulated basically the most critical factor within ERP is permission giving, not only cognitively permission giving, which is important conceptually, but also behaviorally permission giving. So if I go and I touch a doorknob, let's say, of a public bathroom, where there's a lot of poopy particles floating around, and then I eat some pretzels, and I say to my brain, okay, brain, give me AIDS, give me E. coli, give me some horrible, give me COVID, give me whatever you got. I'm willing to die now. The brain just shuts up. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about the treatment. And when people do this therapy very aggressively, OCD can go dormant, which is a beautiful thing. It's like a volcano.
Yeah.
It could still erupt, like for you, 10, 12 years later, it erupted again.
Yes.
Or what often happens is before OCD goes away and a person is declared OCD free, which many of my patients are, there's a phase, very interesting, where it goes into what I refer to as generic OCD. What that means is the emotion without the theme. Because you've done such a great job of showing the brain that the themes are irrelevant and you welcome any new theme that might come. So the brain stops sending the theme, but it perpetuates the broken emotional system. And so people will say to me, I feel like there's some problem, but I don't know what it is.
So you're saying that the physical, emotional attributes are there, but the themes are dormant.
The cognitive part of OCD can be completely blank, but a person wakes
almost
up,
like a general feeling of unease or something.
That's right.
Interesting.
A general feeling of threat, because that's what OCD energy is. It's a threat that there's something critically wrong something going on, and I should fix something. But people, when there's no theme to fix, they're like they even say my brain is looking for a topic. I hear that very regularly. When the theme is absent, and the brain is, because the machine doesn't like saying you're having a crisis, but not being able to point to, and the crisis is this.
Right. I wanted to talk to you about the gatekeeper and the machine. But one of the things that I found that was so interesting, Doc, was when you said something I say to my patients is, if I didn't choose it, leave it. You say that in choice.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get to that, because I found that to be so unbelievably helpful. If I don't choose it, or if I'm not choosing it, leave it. And I wanted you to kind of talk a little bit about that and kind of explain what that means exactly in a practical sense when you say to your patients, if you don't choose it, just leave it. Because I think we're kind of that's exactly what we were talking about with the exposure therapy.
Yeah.
Here it is right here. A frame of mind. Let me read this really quickly. A frame of mind I often encourage with my patients is, quote, if I'm not choosing it, let it be. See, I want to quote it correctly. The headache, the sudden urge to vomit, the panic, the sleep disturbances, and the scary mental associations are just ways we experience the spontaneous output of the machine that is our brain. The brain does not have a desire to torment us. It sends us these reminders to test the acceptability of these prompts. I found this to be one of the most powerful sections of your entire article, which again, I've read probably the whole way through, maybe only 2 or 3 times, but I've read this section and other sections like it probably 1,000 times. Can you speak on that paragraph right there that I just, or that little small part of the article? Because I think to me, it's sort of the apex of the entire article and what we're talking about. Can you maybe expand upon that a little bit, Doc?
Sure. It's so important that we understand, once again, the duplicity between the brain's independent activity, spontaneous activity, and our ability to make choices, let's say, about like what we might talk about or what I might think about. I have a court summons to appear for jury duty, and that's the last thing I want to do because disrupting continuity with patients is important for me. And so my brain has been going over for 2 weeks now since I got the summons, like, what am I going to say to get the hell out of that courtroom as soon as possible? So I've got some ideas. I won't share them at the moment. So that's my agenda. I can choose to fantasize about being in that jury room and being, the judge says, does anyone here think that they have an excuse not to be here? So I'm coming up with those excuses. And that's my choice. But along the way, when I'm in the courtroom, I might have the thought, of, I don't know, throwing my pen at the judge. Like, that thought might occur to me. So that is an independent system. I'm not choosing it. And so if my brain generated that thought, following the guidelines within the article, I'd just say, okay, hey, thanks for sharing. As you're aware, the license plate on one of my cars says whatever, which is Brooklyn, of course, for whatever. Yeah. And obviously that is a very dismissive way of, reacting to one's brain, to be able to say, yeah, thanks for sharing, whatever, it's all good, And so that's really the heart of one of the most important ways of managing this independent system. And also, many of my patients have sleep disturbances. And the reason being is because when people's heads hit the pillow, sometimes people try to get to sleep. And that's a problem. Because when we try to manipulate an independent system, we distance ourselves from the goal.
Right.
And so, it's like the old saying, like, try not to think about a pink elephant, right?
Right.
The very act of
Which
not
is
thinking
in that
about-
section, by the way. Yeah.
Right. The very act of not thinking about a pink elephant activates the thought of a pink elephant.
Right.
So that's why, the idea that, if my brain is going to send pink elephant associations, I want my response to be, hey, okay, thanks for sharing. And when my head hits the pillow, I used to try to get to sleep, and I can tell you that didn't have very positive outcomes. Now when my head hits the pillow, I'm like, okay, I'm in a comfy, cozy place. I'm all snuggled. If sleep visits, great. If it doesn't, I guess I'll be tired tomorrow, and that's survivable. And
Right.
so I am welcoming the potential for sleep, but I'm not looking for it any longer. And so people with OCD, they look for the absence of these associations, and looking for the absence of it, in other words, by trying to control an independent system or something that we can't choose, has the inverse, the paradoxical inverse effect.
It's like, correct me if I'm wrong. This is where you kind of get into the idea of separating you're not your brain, that the gatekeeper, and I highly, highly encourage everybody listening and watching, you have to devour The Choice, this amazing article. It's long, but it's worth it. It's too long. I've told Doc it's too long. By the way, didn't you have an editor, Doc? Did you not have an editor?
How many times have I heard it's too long? But this is how I respond. As a matter of fact, most of my Gen X or Gen Y patients.
I'm a Gen Xer. I'm a Gen Xer, Doc.
They have this thing, a TLDNR, too long, did not read. And so literally 80% of people who say, oh, I read the Choice article, and then I go, did you finish it? And they're like, well,
I finished it.
Well, they're like, well, okay, Mr. Finish It. What's the surprise ending in the Choice article?
Are you actually testing Nez right now?
I won't test you.
Oh,
Anyway,
here's the surprise. I know the answer. You ready? I know the answer.
What's
the
that?
surprise is, which I found so profound, actually, not to take everything in this article as a sort of remedy, as a sort of end all be all, and to understand. This is why I wanted to share this quote from Goethe, the great German author. The end of the article, and I think you've kind of mentioned this many, many times throughout this interview, in regards to, I'm not here to solve all your problems. I'm not the grand wizard. It's up to you. You're the driver, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the article really hits home. You need to do the work. Meaning, that's why I found it so interesting, Doc, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm cutting you off for a good reason. You never ever got this, and I'm happy actually for the voluminous of it. You never actually got this deeply philosophical, I felt, in any of your work. When I say any of your work, I only know you from your written work and just the small conversations we've had, which I've devoured, by the way. But in all of your previous, like Thinking the Unthinkable and articles like that I've come across.
Speak of the devil.
Speak of the devil, exactly, which is powerful. But I always felt it was more utility. Here's X, the problem. Here's Y, Z, some options to what have you. In this choice, which I thought was such an interesting. The title really struck me, because one of the most harrowing things about going through this, Doc, is the feeling I can't go to a party, I can't go to a wedding, I can't enjoy my life because I'm out of control of this thing. I have no control. What you have illuminated, not helped, I'm not going to say helped, but what you have illuminated is that is totally untrue. You do have control. You do have power. And the power lies. I want to read this Goethe, the gatekeeper. I want to get to that. But can you see this on the screen right now, Doc?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So Johann Wolfgang von Goethe once said, I have come to the frightening conclusion. This is a 17th century German author. I have come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. I possess tremendous power to make life miserable or joyous. What are your thoughts on that, Doc? And how does that relate? And how does that relate to the gatekeeper and you taking ownership of this thing?
Yeah, I mean, when the line where he says, "Make my life miserable joyous," I really love the Stoics philosophy. You mentioned Aristotle yesterday.
Yes.
The Stoics from Greece, where they say nothing in and of itself is good or bad. It's all based on how we understand it. And so, in that regard, I certainly concur. I think what he's saying here. But to understand that we are the captain of our ship,
Right.
that we, like to me, I'm sort of in this moment forward, kind of guy. I really don't try to lament about the past. I'm just like, this is where I am now, and I'm looking forward.
You just beat me to it, Doc, because I was going to go Stoic next. Here's another quote from Marcus Aurelius, which I've read Meditations. I'm sure you have too. You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or trouble your soul about things you can't control. This is my favorite line, Doc. These things are not asking to be judged by you. Leave them alone. Doesn't that kind of correlate, Doc, to your idea of irrelevance? And can you maybe connect those two?
Yeah, no, very much so. I just wanted to finish up on the explanation.
I interrupted again.
You did.
What a big
you
shock.
were going to win at that time. I don't think you can help yourself, by the way.
I can't.
You have terminal interruptus disorder. So the article, and you sort of said it when you called it my opus. I took 30 years of being a specialist with OCD.
Right.
And I wanted to be able to say to people, patients, I want to be able to say, if you're in therapy, there are things that you bring that can facilitate reaching your goal. And there's a lot of things that can interfere with you reaching your goal. And I wanted people to be able to participate in therapy. And this is my kind of like a guideline. This is my instruction manual on basically how to live life, but how to be effective in therapy, how to benefit from therapy. And so if it took me 47 pages, single space, to achieve that goal, I offer no apologies, and I'm not going to edit it, because I dare you, Nez, to show me the sections of the article that would benefit from it not being there. I dare you. So when we speak next, or when we meet on the boat, you tell me the sections that, I think the article would be just as good if you took that section out.
By the way, I can't. I honestly, the fact that the choice is free, and I'm not being hyperbolic, and I'm known to exaggerate and be hyperbolic. Big shock to Doc, I'm sure. This is a contribution to civilization, the choice. I really believe that, because that's why I was showing Goethe and the Stoics, and there's so many other interesting arteries of life that it connects to. Is this was more of a not just utility. This wasn't just utility. Like you said perfectly, it was like a manual on living. There's a beautiful section on centeredness, remaining centered, with beautiful examples. There's a lot of your own kind of life values and principles, I think, that inform the article and inform the tutelage and the guidance, so to speak.
The reason that all of my articles are free.
Are you interrupting me?
Yes, I am. And I owe you about 4. Not that I'm keeping score or anything. Not that I would be so rigid as to do that.
I don't mind. Hey, Doc, you see, I don't mind. I say whatever. Interrupt me. You're the one that, you know what, Doc, you're very sensitive about interruptions. I say whatever. Interrupt me. I don't care.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you back. If I can just now think about what I was. Oh, yeah. So everything is free. It says at the beginning of the choice article, and my son didn't agree with putting it there, but it says right in the beginning of the choice article, this is a call to arms. Meaning, I need to put out a warning.
Why didn't he like that?
He just thought it was too dramatic.
Okay.
This is a warning that there's a lot of ignorance in society. There's a lot of ignorance in psychology. And I hate ignorance in psychology. If you were a disease physician, if you were a physician for human diseases, and there were people out there using, like blooding, like when they used to bleed people when they had fevers, and there were still physicians out there, bleeding people to get rid of a fever. I think you would be livid.
Right.
And ignorance in psychology is something that I have no patience for.
Right.
When I have patients tell me about prior psychologists that they've worked with or therapists, and I know that they're practicing out of their realm of expertise, and that's unethical, by the way.
Mm.
You can sue a psychologist for practicing out of the realm of expertise. So when I hear about practitioners, offering rational responses to OCD themes, or if, I hear therapists giving non-scientific recommendations just based on their own training paradigm, I'm livid. And I'll say to my patient, that person deserves to be dragged into the street and shot, because to offer themselves up as an expert and to then misguide someone's life,
it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Person psychology to me is just as important as their physical health.
100%, even more. You can't have the physical with it. Yeah.
So that's why all of my articles are free, because it's really a war against ignorance.
I would have paid, Doc, and I'm not BSing at all. I would have paid $500 for that article. I've devoured it. I mean, you don't believe me. I know you don't believe me, Doc. I have devoured.
Hey, stop reading my mind, Nez. Because if I don't believe you, you don't think I'm going to call you out on that? You don't think I'm going to say, I don't believe a damn thing you're saying? You don't think I would say that?
That's
so
true.
If you say anything I don't believe, I'm going to let you know. So don't tell me what I believe and I don't, because
I want everything you say. I want everybody in the comments to comment down below. Do you think that Doc and I should go on the road? I just comment a Y for yes and an N for no. I can't wait to see this poll. Free poll. Okay. But Doc, seriously, I would have paid. I have God knows how many ridiculous subscriptions to Hulu and all this BS that I never watched, that my kids charge Disney Plus and never watch, what have you. I would easily, the fact that this is free, the fact that this isn't a book that you should charge people with, the fact that you gave it to free, I think just reinforces what you just said right there, because you understand the ramifications of getting unsound, unprofessional, unsubstantiated advice. I think it's amazing. I would have paid $500 for this easily.
Thank you. I don't want your money, because within my values is gift giving.
Yes.
And within my values is education.
Yes.
And to be able to give back in terms of educating people is a really strong value to me. So your thank you, it means the world to me.
Well, it's not just thank you, Doc. You're saving lives. I know you don't believe this, but you're saving lives.
You did it again. I'm
reading your mind.
Not only are you an interrupter,
I'm an interrupter.
You interrupt us. Terminal interruptus disorder.
Are you saying you're going to coin a new term because of me? Can I be famous, Doc?
You're famous. Professor Nez, terminus interruptus. The first ever.
By the way, I want to have you on the show again, obviously, because we can't even scratch the surface.
We'd love to be here.
Before we go, because I know that everybody, that your time is valuable, and I don't want to. Before we go, what can you tell us, Doc? I'm going to give you the floor right now. And by the way, every way you can approach and find and discover Dr. Stephen Phillipson, I, again, just want to reiterate this. I'm going to leave all of his information, the link to the article, in the show notes, in the description, and in the pinned comment. But, Doc, I want to give you the floor. What is it that you want to leave our audience with? What is it that you want to say fundamentally, and maybe even in a kind of macro level way, to leave our audience with before we say goodbye? I want to give you the floor.
So in the world of dispelling ignorance, many people will go online and they'll read horrendous stories about OCD being considered a lifelong disease that basically has no treatment. And I'm happy to say that you can put OCD into a dormant state. The reason that so many people are so pessimistic about their recovery opportunity or the probability for a positive prognosis or positive recovery is because of the ignorance out there. There are very, very few specialists that do behavior therapy. There's even a psychologist, I won't mention his name, he thinks he's the god of focusing on not to ruminate as part of ritualizing, even though in my first article in basically 89, I talked about rumination being the ritual of Puro. But this person says that ERP, exposure and response prevention, is not the gold standard for treatment. And that's disgusting. That's like saying that an antibiotic is not the gold standard for strep throat, that being in a humidified room can do just as good. So you really want to understand the difference. And that's what's really so painful, is that there is so much ignorance. People don't know the difference between a therapist and a licensed psychologist. And people don't know that with behavioral therapy, that you can receive tremendous benefit. And it's so, by the way, I also want to add to that, one of the things that I do that's extremely rare as a psychologist is I have every patient record every minute of every session. And then I tell them, and by the way, in between session homework is a huge part of behavior therapy. The therapy and recovery doesn't take place in the 45 minutes that I see a person once a week. The recovery takes place in the way that I provide guidelines toward that recovery. And so, you can ask your therapist, what is your training? What is your expertise? What percentage of your caseload is this condition? And, so I have patients record every minute of every meeting we have, because when a patient re-listens to the therapy session in between meeting, they come back now having gotten basically 3 therapy sessions for one, because when you listen to yourself on tape and when you hear what's being said to you and you're reviewing it rather than being in it, you double the information acquisition that you get.
100%. I love that. And Doc, one last question. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's what I went through. I mean, you just described in Technicolor what I went through. Is I went through many different people before I discovered the truth, okay, which I'm calling Dr. Stephen Phillipson's work, The Truth. And nobody could help me. And one person said, oh yeah, here, I'm going to throw a bunch of, Zoloft, Wellbutrin, and Wellbutrin gave me seizures. Oh, here you go. Here's some Prozac. Here's some Zoloft. Try all that. Like it was candy. I'm a 19-year-old, Doc. This is like 1996, 97. I'm a 19-year-old. And you're just throwing this stuff at me. And it gave me, I went to a party. I'll never forget this. I went to a party, as most 19-year-olds would do. And I had to leave early because I was feeling weird. And I got home and I literally thought I was going to die. I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. I was having like a strange physical, it was awful. And so I stopped all that. Then I went to all these different people who were obviously not qualified. And one of them, to her credit, as I said, stood up and said, I don't want to ever see you again because you know more about this than I do. Because I was explaining what I've learned so far about what's going on.
When patients tell me that they've seen therapists, that they had to explain OCD to be helped by the therapist.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's like explaining anatomy to a doctor. It's like, no, you don't understand. My pancreas is over here.
Yeah. I say that going to an LMFT therapist for OCD is like going to a podiatrist for brain surgery.
Can you explain to the audience what an LMFT is?
It's called Licensed Marital and Family Therapy. Now, what marital therapy or family therapy has to do with treating anxiety disorders?
Nothing.
I'm a little confused. And that these LMFT people get licensed as therapists, and I explained the meaning of therapist, and then they go to, let's say, this organization called NoCD, and we can, next time we meet, start talking about now these virtual corporations and the trouble with that. So these virtual corporations hire these extremely minimally trained therapists, give them a week or two, course in understanding and treating OCD, and then send them out as now qualified therapists. And I'm getting patients who come in and say, oh yeah, I went to NoCD, and they've had a lot of negative experiences, and been offered a lot of potentially damaging therapeutic, ideas. Like even someone who has OCD about maybe being a pedophile, and the patient asking them, are they safe to be around children? The therapist asking them, are they safe to be around children?
Wow.
If you can imagine.
Wow, that's so bad. Whereas somebody like you wouldn't even add relevance to that.
No, I
correct?
tell my patients with, what we call pedophile OCD or POCD, I'm like, I would leave my 2 kids with you alone with you for a week. And at the end of that week, you'd be in a lot more danger than my kids would.
So, Doc,
I'm not just being funny. I absolutely,
of course.
people
No, of
with
course.
pedophile OCD have zero inclination toward harming children.
Right.
But I've had many, many female patients actually have being reported to Child Protective Services by pediatricians because they're mentioning intrusive thoughts about sexually or physically harming their child, and the pediatrician thinking, I need to report this.
Yeah.
And
Doc,
that's why I get infuriated by ignorance.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask this, Doc, before we go, because this is something that everybody who has experiencing present tense too, goes through. How do I know, Doc? How do I know that this isn't a real threat, a real danger, that maybe I am somebody who shouldn't be around children? And how do I know that it's just, what's the difference between it being real because it feels real and it being just OCD or just anxiety? How do I know, Doc? I know I can feel my viewers and listeners screaming at me. Ask him in quotes, the question. How do you know the difference, Doc?
Okay, so Nez, I hear that question all the time. And it's a complicated question, easy for me to answer. Next time we meet, can you write that down if we start off with that one?
I love it. Let's leave them hanging. God, you're brilliant, Doc. You're good at this. Okay, I want to say thank you so much. Absolutely, we will. I want to say thank you so much.
I was looking forward to this since you mentioned the idea. It's as fun as I thought it would be.
Absolutely. I can definitely reciprocate that. Thank you so much, Doctor. And I can't wait to have you back on again. Again, everything will be in the show notes, in the description, and in the pinned comment below. Dr. Stephen Phillipson, you're a miracle worker, man. And I hope to God you continue. I hope to God that you understand your relevance and understand the impact that you have, because it has been absolutely monumental. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for sharing that.
Awesome.